All right, here we go. Coaches coaching, coaches coaching. We're on, what are we on? Number 11, 10?
It's like 10 or 11. It might be
10,
11.
11? Might be 11. It might be 11. So today we've got a couple different things depending on time. But first, we have to start with our interesting fact. Interesting fact. Yesterday, I had delivered to my house the Star Wars Millennium Falcon Lego set with over 7,500 pieces. This is the manual to put this thing together. Yeah, it's a book. If you've ever gotten Legos before, normally it's like a little pamphlet with like a couple pages of like, okay, put this step. This is an entire book. So there's your interesting fact for the morning.
Next level.
Yep. I'm so excited. I can't even wait. All right. So let's get right into it. We wanted to talk first what we had over the weekend, and Lane, I'm going to feature you on this. Over the weekend, we had the MoveU guys over, and they talked through a bunch of things with our team. And so we wanted to kind of touch on some of those things, mainly what do they call it? The 6-point checklist.
Yeah.
So, Lane, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So the big statement that they based their entire 4 hours around was this statement. And if you heard this, help yourself and your clients live pain-free lives through a positive growth mindset and body awareness. Okay, that was kind of like their big quote that they kept pushing the whole time and bringing everything back to that. So, and also RJ, I sent you a picture of the 6-point checklist from his Instagram on your email. Just if you want to pull it up, you don't need to.
Yeah, I got it. I'll pull it up while you're talking.
Okay, cool. So the cool thing of what they talked about, and going right into the body awareness, kind of their whole premise of their talk, and a lot of things that they said was very much in line with Boyle's information, with Gray Cook's information, with Stu McGill's information. And so, they talked about, if we're going from the bottom up, first creating an arch in your feet. From there, like if we're looking at a squat checklist, arching your feet, rotating the knees out, finding a neutral pelvis, getting the core engaged, learning a head position and shoulder blade position. And so then we walked through each one of those checkpoints and worked on different drills in order to be able to, get into those positions. And one of the cool things was it kind of showed us that a lot of us still have some work to do, whether that's on our feet or finding neutral with our pelvis. Yeah, there you go. So what I wanted to do is just kind of quickly run through each of those checkpoints and just kind of recap some of the different coaching tools they gave us, different ideas for utilizing those checkpoints, right? And the thing
if anybody's on while he's talking that was there on Saturday that maybe had some points that maybe Lane's missing, please
absolutely
put it in the chat or interject if you can. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, please guys, if you have other big takeaways that you loved, I'd love to hear them too. So let's just jump into creating the arch. I think this was new for a lot of people. I'm just going to show you guys my feet for a sec. And that was, he had all of us take our shoes off and, take our socks off. And how many of us that had flat feet was really interesting. And he talks about how a lot of times that's just because we've been essentially babying our feet, and talked about how we need to learn how to create an arch. And so if you can see my feet, they talked about digging your big toe in, spreading your toes, and gripping the floor. And you might notice how much of an arch that created for me. I'll show you again. So dig the big toe in, spread the toes, drive the knees out. All of a sudden I'm creating an arch for myself. And that's going to lead to more feedback from the ground, more stable position, better glute activation, just from working on that drill. I know some of our trainers have already went out and bought minimalist shoes because of this. Kaylin, Adam,
Oh, that's
you
great.
guys. But, I think that was a really good drill for us to see like how important the foot is in all the different movements that we're doing. Any other things you'd want to add on that, Nick or Seth? I see you on the call, or Ryan, I saw you on the call.
No, I just know that my toes are really jacked up, and I'm one of those people that have bought minimalist shoes now.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, cool.
It did amaze me though, like just what we spent 5 minutes on that, right? Not that long, realistically, when he went around and like showed us all. And and I've talked to other people, other coaches that were there, I'm sure you did too, of just how much I was in pain from just playing with my feet because we're not used to it. And how we've kind of just gotten out of that environment and we need to get comfortable with it again.
Yeah. No, yeah, I love that. And I think it just showed too that the thing I loved is Dan has talked about that, how important it is to be able to feel the ground. Kevin Carr talked about that in one of his presentations. That's one of the things we noticed was there was a lot of alignment with, different coaches that we really respect. So that was really good. So first
one thing I want to say on that, that's important. It's kind of interesting on the feet thing. I wasn't there at the MoveU thing. I wasn't able to make it. But I might just kind of a side note story. My uncle, years ago had some neck issues. Well, after talking to him, he had an accident with his feet about a year previous, maybe 2 years previous. And basically ever since that moment, he's had issues all the way up his entire kinetic chain, his hips, his knees, his back, his low back, his upper back, his neck. I mean, literally ever since that one moment of hurting his feet, he's had all these issues. And so now he's gone back and corrected his feet, and now all these issues are starting to go away. Anyways.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's kind of stuff they were talking about too, is how like you can't ignore any part of the chain because everything's affecting everything else. And so, if you're starting from the ground up, get your feet in a good position, get your arch created. And then the second thing, so now we'll call that good on that checkpoint. Second, go to the knees, right? If we're looking at a squat, and he pointed out several people's squats, they would get down, and then they'd buckle in, they'd come back out. They'd come down, and they'd buckle in a little bit, come back out. And a lot of times it was because their feet were collapsing in their arch, that their knees would cave in. So if you first get your feet, drive your knees out, that's going to turn on the glutes. You go to squat, you're going to be in a much more stable position. So it's just as simple as what we already taught. That was very much in line with what we're teaching people. Screw your feet into the floor and your knees will line up with your feet properly. So
I thought it was pretty interesting, without throwing her under the bus and using her name, but how one of our coaches, like, they could show like, hey, look at the bunions on her feet, and this is because of this. It's not because you have like, hey, you just genetically were given this. It's because your body's not moving properly.
Yeah, so several of our coaches had bunions on their feet, but that's because in their shoes, they're always pushing right on the insides of their feet and losing their arch. And that was just an indicator of that over how many thousands of times that they've done squats. And then when you're looking at their feet, you're like, oh my gosh, that's why. So yeah, I agree with you, Nick. That was really interesting. So if you're moving up the chain, so creating your arch, making sure your feet and ankles are in a good position, driving the knees out so you can get your knees lined up. And then from there, creating a neutral pelvis. And this is probably what they spent most of the time on, and probably what made a lot of us mostly uncomfortable. So some of the different drills they use, to teach, if you guys watch Andrew in the videos, the guy's extremely hypermobile, so he can really exaggerate all of these different cues. But some of the main ones that I like taking away, they had us kind of just stand up and just go into hyperextension, go into posterior tilt, anterior tilt, and just kind of move through that until we found our neutral spot and kept having us work on finding neutral. And a lot of coaches struggled to get any of that tilt going with their hips. And so that showed them that was something to work on. And then that same thing on, finding neutral pelvis was they talked about the role of the glutes and how a lot of people's glutes aren't activated, right? So we talked about how to practice doing glute pops, which I'm not going to demonstrate for you guys on this call.
Dang it.
That's why Nick got up this morning. So yeah, glute pops, practicing essentially just standing there.
So are we supposed to Google glute pops now?
Well, you're essentially just standing there flexing your butt. Like you're driving your toes in and flexing your glutes. Practice, turn your toes out.
I don't think we really got a good image of that. Maybe.
Yeah, turn around. Let's show it.
Here, I'll talk and Nick can go.
Hey, do you have a broomstick or something? Do you want to go through those drills? I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just say one more thing on the glute stuff. The thing that was really interesting is they were showing us how a lot of us can't connect to our glutes. And so like when we were doing glute pops, they'd have a partner hold your leg while they're trying to do that glute pop. And a lot of people couldn't activate their glute without squeezing their entire leg. So he talked about how that's a drill you can practice anywhere, whether you're sitting in the car, standing in line, practice connecting. And you'll notice the more you dig your toes into the floor, the better connection you're going to get up the chain. And the better your glutes are going to work, the better your hips are going to work, the better the chain's going to work. So yeah,
okay,
Nick,
wait, I want some clarification. I wasn't there. So on the one drill, and I'm being serious, I'm not. I want to see you do glute pops on camera and have it recorded and presented to YouTube for all to see. Anyway, so if I'm doing the drill, I'm holding on to my thigh, I'm tightening my glute, and so as I'm doing that, they're saying that I should activate my entire leg or should not activate my entire leg.
I should be able to separate them. I should be able to.
Got it. Okay. I want to make sure I understood that.
Without squeezing my quads and hamstrings.
Got it.
But a lot of people weren't able to separate that.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. I heard it the other way the first time around. Okay. Got it.
Nick, why don't you talk about I'll grab a broomstick, but why don't you start talking about those two different stick drills that we did and what they like to call them. And then I'll be right back with my broomstick.
I don't know if I want to use the name for it. Maybe Lane can say it when he comes back. Basically, we've all done. As soon as he shows you, it'll come together a little bit better. But they're talking about pelvis, and we've all done a PVC pipe on our backs, right, to see that hip hinge. And if we have the connection points all through the chain of like, hey, it's connected to my head, my upper back, down on my hips or my tailbone, and then we're following through. Well, it depends on where that pelvis is, and I can't really see, but it's going to be better when Lane comes back, is I can have anterior or posterior tilt. Well, depending on which one that I have, yep, you got that on video too. Depending on which one I have is which angle I want to do it in. Because if I'm going this direction, I could still keep connections to what's happening. So they have a different drill depending on which tilt you are on your hips. So he'll show you when you come back because it'll make more sense. There you go.
Did you do the front one?
Well, I didn't have a stick, so but yeah, I was talking about which angle.
Can somebody say the name of this
drill? It was the stick dick drill.
Oh, yeah. Come on. That's great. That's good stuff.
Face stick.
Face stick.
Yeah, face stick.
It's face. Yeah, face dick stick.
Yeah,
Oh my
face.
gosh.
Yeah, face stick stick.
Oh my gosh! And
Put it on
then
your
those that weren't there, somebody sent me. I can't remember if it was Adam who it was, but somebody sent me a video of everybody with their shirts off in the room. And I was going, okay, if you didn't know what was going on and you just got that image, yeah. Okay. Anyways, there we go.
Yeah, you should have seen how many people were looking through the team room.
So okay, so we normally do the front, and then we're doing the or normally do the back. This is for the front. So this is if you have a anterior tilt or posterior tilt in your hip.
So people like me, I've got an anterior tilt, so I can sometimes cheat the drill on my back.
Got it.
Because I can just
because you're gonna arch your back and your back's because you're.
But you can't do that when you do it on the front. You can't do that. You can't cheat because it will come off.
Got it. Okay.
But so they did it on both drills, RJ. So they did it on the hinge and the squat.
Yeah, and the squat. That's what was interesting too. And usually, if you have the same problem on the hinge, you're gonna have the same problem on the squat. So, like for me, working on the stick dick drill is gonna be better than on my
You
back.
work on that a lot.
Got it.
Thanks.
Got it.
So then going into your squat with that drill too.
Got it. Okay.
And somebody asked, what do you do with an obese client? They're all, just grab the U-bar.
All right. So going back to the list then. So far we've talked feet, we've talked knees, we've talked pelvis. And so now we're on to core engagement, chin back, slide blades down.
Yeah. So the biggest thing there, and I would say the neutral pelvis is kind of the one they spent the most time on. If you can get into that neutral position, that's going to help you on any movement that you're doing. And then, let's switch to engaging the core. We practice doing our squats, doing our hinges, connecting. A lot of times we put thumbs and fingers on the rib cage and the pelvis. And, they pointed out some people would go through their hinge and they'd either extend through or they'd collapse. And I think a lot of us were very surprised how often we were turning our core off throughout the movement, right? A lot of people, as soon as they get into that extended position, core's off. And so you'd be like, okay, I brace my core, and you'd go to squat, and then you'd extend, and you'd turn your core off. So we practiced that drill a lot of making sure, okay, my core's braced, and I'm in that neutral pelvis, but now hold there and not losing that core being braced as you go through the movement.
And so the drill is, so what was the drill again? You're putting your hands where?
So the biggest thing is if Lane puts his arms above his head and his rib cage pops out, I know now that his core is not turned on. So if you could put your fingers underneath your rib cage, then that means you are not engaging your core at all.
Got it.
That means you've relaxed your core, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I got it.
And they did that through all the drills. So you can lay down on your back, put your hands above your head, and you'll see if that rib cage will pop up in a chin up or a pull up.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense.
So they talked about using that as a checkpoint when you're watching people and yourself, because as soon as you see that rib pop, they've relaxed their core and they're, either stealing from their T-spine or they've lost neutral pelvis. It can go up or down the chain. Yeah. So they use similar drills that we use as far as just teaching core bracing, right? Exhaling, they're big on the breathing, finding that zone of apposition. You can go into a hip bridge and find it. But it's essentially neutral pelvis and then rib cage, pelvis, press together, make sure your core's engaged, and hit your stomach, make sure you're tight, then try and go through that movement.
Got it.
And
so
I want us to be able to get through all these checkpoints, so I don't want to go on it too much, but I just love the entire presentation of how the whole idea is that you're a coach and not a trainer, because every single person they brought up to squat had a decent squat if you just looked at it as a trainer, but when you actually look at it as a coach, now all of a sudden things change.
Yeah, I mean, they really dug deep on some of these checkpoints for sure, and like really showing us, you can get a little deeper in helping these people. The next one I would go to is just the sliding the blades down. This was the one I feel like most of us had the most amount of challenges with, is getting our shoulders in a good position, right? The drill I really liked was essentially you just stand up and you want to point your armpits forward, and you practice keeping the shoulders down, point your armpits forward, and it'll teach your shoulder blades to go down and back. So I'm right here, down and back. So that was the one they started here. The second one was a lot of people wing their scapula. So he had us practice shoulder down and put it in a good position this way. And then a lot of times these are helpful with a partner because they can kind of show you where your shoulder blade's at, because a lot of us really struggled to get that in a good position. And then from there, we took it into planks and pull-ups and practiced, locking down that shoulder blade in a pulling position, locking down the shoulder blades in a pushing position. And it comes back to the same cues that we already use. Screw your hands into the floor, keep your shoulder blades down back, shoulders in the back, pockets. Those are, like they talked about, however you use to get in this position, they're like, we don't care. If it works, it works.
That goes back to what we talked about, I think it was last week or the week before, on internal versus external or kinesthetic versus tactical, all the different types of cueing. It doesn't matter how you're getting there as long as you get there.
Get the result, yeah.
Simplest path to get there.
Yep.
So it looks like the last one on that list you had is chin. Yeah, chin back.
Yeah, and that it was essentially just making sure your head position's good. If you are somebody that has this posture, when you're in the car, you might want to sit here and do chin tucks to help correct it. But we didn't spend a ton of time on the chin tuck. It's just essentially make sure their head's in the right position, their chin's tucked back. And then if you do have some of those imbalances, you're going to need to work on some of those drills, mostly just chin tucks.
Got it. So if we're looking at the whole list, so arch at the beginning, rotating the knees out. So on the arch, it was, if I remember correctly, it was dig the toe, big toe, spread the toes.
Yep.
Grip the floor. Right, those three things.
Yep.
Rotate the knees out. Screwing the feet in the floor, that sort of thing. Neutral pelvis. We talked about the stick drills, the front and the back. What was the one? Face stick. What was it?
Yeah.
Face stick. That's a great drill. Yeah. Core engagement. Talking about the hands on the belly, sliding the blades. You're talking about facing the armpits, right? And then the last one was chin back. Here, did we miss anything?
No, that was good. I'll just say one point on it. When you're working on these checkpoints and you're trying to do them all, it becomes almost overwhelming how many things there are to work on. And so at least one of my personal takeaways for me was just simply like, for me, I need to work on my shoulder blades and I need to work on creating that arch. But a lot of times when I was trying to do one thing, the other thing would stop. So it's going to take practice, just like we talk about with movement and mastery. It's going to take as long as it takes, but you got to be committed to the journey. And I love that message that they kept driving home. Don't tell a client, oh yeah, we'll get you fixed up in 4 weeks. He's like, you're just setting yourself up for failure in 4 weeks. Help communicate and empower the client to take ownership of their own body by first taking ownership of your body and learning how to master these movements, and then inspire them to take ownership. And it takes as long as it takes. He said he keeps telling people when they ask him that question, well, how long is this going to take? How long am I going to be working on this for? And he just yelled, until you're dead, okay, until you die. That's how long you're going to work on this stuff, because it's always that important, and this is a lifelong journey. So anyways, I love that.
Yeah, the other thing I like, looking at it, you can basically utilize all these 6 checkpoints in almost every single movement that we do: rows, push-ups, anything, anti-rotations, planks. I mean, you name it, you can use this for every single movement, pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's probably what they said, huh?
Yeah, it is. They kind of summed it up with that.
Great. Does anybody else have any other things on the 6 checkpoint? I want to turn some time over to Nick here at the end, since we missed him at the beginning. But does anybody else have anything?
We might not have time.
MoveU?
We could just do that another day because we're running low on time. I know that. The thing I had from it too is like we spent 4 hours with these guys, right, at MoveU, and they gave us lots of tools and lots of work that we can use as coaches, but we're not going to sit there in an hour session and just work on this. We're going to look at it during movement, right? But we got to give them fitness. So we're not just going to sit there and do foot drills for an entire hour. And so that's the other thing too we always got to look at is like, hey, I still got to give them fitness. These are tools that I need to work on every single time I see them, but I'm not going to sit there and dig in because they still got to sweat. They still got to move. But this is what I need to look at every single time they come into session.
Awesome.
Yeah, give them a little homework. Like if their arch is an issue, show it to them once and follow up. But yeah, I agree with you. Like you said, it took 4 hours, and you got to balance what we're trying to accomplish. Talking implementation, right? How you implement this stuff. Use it as a tool. Great coaching tool.
Yeah, one thing I would say in kind of closing on what these guys are talking about is taking these tools, taking these checkpoints and implementing it, obviously, but then coming full circle and get your client to have an understanding, like these guys are talking about, have them take ownership of their movement. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday, one of my clients, we were doing that stick drill, not the face one, but the one on the back. Put this stick on the back, do some hip hinges, right? And we've done this drill a number of times. I've been training her for a number of weeks now. And she pointed out to me yesterday, she's like, I can now keep the stick on all 3 points. She's like, I can do it. She's like, I couldn't even do that standing up, just standing here. Now I'm able to do it through a full hip hinge. And the reason that that's important is because now she gets it, right? That's a huge thing. I'll never forget, and I've told the master trainers and head trainers this a number of times, Gene Lamont, he was the CEO of Gold's Gym, and he's currently on our board at Vasa. I'll never forget what he said in terms of taking your culture and implementing it. He basically said, you'll know that you've made it when your clients are speaking your language, right? And that's when you know you've made it, is when the clients are the ones that are talking the language. The clients, I'll never forget when these guys went to go see Boyle's group out in Boston. They talked about how the clients were coaching people. There was clients coaching other clients, right? And so it's great that we're learning this information and that we're getting this and we're applying it to our clients. Now it's a matter of educating our clients and having them own the movement. And just like you said, this is something that everybody should work on all the time. Those 6 points, going back to these 6 points, those are things that every single one of us is going to have to work on for the rest of our lives, right? And so you talk about retention, you talk about keeping, the life of a client, all that good stuff. And some people think, well, I'm only going to train people for a handful of weeks or months, get them to a certain goal and then we're done. Well, no, that's not the case, right? The movement, this is something that is ongoing all the time, but that's if you are mastering it yourself and coaching that and having your clients have an understanding of what that mastery is as well. So there you go.
Love it.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else? Coaches coaching. Wednesdays, 7 o'clock, my new favorite thing. All right, guys, have a wonderful day. Appreciate you. And see some of you tomorrow. Great.